funeral pyres. Many people believe that salvation there ensures salvation, but now those
Good.
We're at 12 now. So Molly, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining in. We'll get started and more people should join in the next 5 to 10, I would think. So our guest speaker today is Shelley McGrail, who has over 30 years of experience, including executive human resources leadership. Over those 30 years, she and her organization weathered major business disruptions and challenges that go along with being a global corporation listed on the New York Stock Exchange. She also happens to be my mom, but you can call her Shelley. And we appreciate you sharing your expertise. I'll pass it over to you. I know you have a lot of thoughts and practices to implement for leadership in uncertain times, in particular, having done that for 30 plus years, and I heard all about it mostly at the dinner table. So it'll be nice for me to see the other angle as an adult who is also now in the professional world. I'll leave it to Shelley.
Okay, great. Thanks, Molly, and thank you, Andrea, for having me today. I think you can all see me on the video, although I'm not able to see you today. So thanks for taking a moment to start to introduce yourselves on the chat. And if you haven't done that yet, I would really appreciate it because it gives me a sense of who's here today and what you specifically want to get away from today's session. And so if you could just give us a few of the facts and go ahead and start now and continue to add as we go through, and I'll be able to see that as we go along. We'll have points in the presentation where, I want it to be really interactive, so you'll get as much out of it as you put into it. You've heard that before. So we'll have plenty of time for questions and to hear about also your experiences, because I think the collective group, at least the group that I saw that was registered as of this morning, it's a really experienced group of people, and I think you're going to learn a lot from each other. And as you keep that in mind, do take note of people that you seem to have some things in common with, or perhaps people that you've heard that have shared something that you really are struggling with and can learn from. And then after the session, you can follow up with Molly separately, and she can help connect and network the two of you, because that's a big part of these webinars. Is in the past, everybody was able to get together personally for learning, and now it's remote. So there's no reason why networking should stop. So be sure you take advantage of that. And also exciting to see that we have Stéphane, I hope I said that right, here from France. So we're not necessarily all sitting here in the US. So welcome to everybody. I wanted to
go on. I want to make sure that everyone can see the PowerPoint, and then that if you need to see the video and a thumbnail, just give us a shout if you aren't seeing the PowerPoint on your screen, and we can let you know how to get there.
Good, thank you, Molly. Yes, anytime along the way, just feel free to interrupt and let us know, because it's important you can see this. So I wanted to do just a little bit more on my background, just in case any of this connects with things that you're doing or businesses that you're in. As Molly said, I have too many years of experience. It's kind of hard to put 30 plus on a piece of paper, but here we go. It doesn't seem like that. I do serve on 2 advisory boards, one for a national construction company, as well as the graduate level HR master's program for one of the universities here in the US. I spent my career really as a whole for Eaton Corporation, which is a global company. It's about depends what year you're talking about, but it's somewhere between 22 to $20 billion revenue, and about flexing around 100,000 people globally. And so I retired a couple years ago. I do a little bit of consulting on the side for some special occasions. And, my experience at Eaton was being head of HR for one of our 4 businesses, and again, a very global business. So I had major operations in Europe as well as Asia and in the Americas. So I have a lot of experience really around the world. in the whole span of human resources and business. And then also spent many years in the corporate headquarters as being head of talent management and organizational effectiveness for Eaton globally. And so what that means is everything from onboarding new employees to training, development, selection, recruiting, all the way through succession management and executive changes and transitions. That was kind of all within my area of responsibility. So I've had a chance to deep dive in some of these topics, and one of those being around leadership, because we did have a very dedicated leadership development group, everything from first line level leaders all the way through executive leadership. And so as an example, when our CEO, Sandy Cutler, retired a few years ago, that job was filled internally by who is now the CEO, and that's Craig Arnold. So you can imagine when you fill a CEO seat from inside, it creates a lot of shuffling internally. And so we had a specific program just to help those leaders get acclimated to their new roles and really hit the ground running. So I mentioned that not so much just to, I mean, there are things I'm proud of, but more for you to know where I come from in the event that you have questions, and maybe those are things that I can help answer for you. So let's just jump into it. I'm really curious. Obviously, a lot is happening right now with COVID-19 and business, and I just want to check in and see how you're feeling in particular. I know we're not usually talking about feelings sometimes in businesses, but I'd like to just pick one of the faces on the slide and just put in the chat window which one you feel most like at work these days. Thanks, Jack, for getting us started. See, 5 and 8 look a little bit alike too, don't they? Got a little bit of a surprise. Sylvain looks like a little bit of, I'm not so sure, maybe smiling, maybe not. Well, I'm glad. I want to see from all of you. I'm glad to hear we don't have anybody sitting at back at number 1 right now. I think a lot of people are past that part now that we see how this virus is rolling along. It's at first, I think it was a major inconvenience in a lot of ways, and people were really angry about it, but having to stay at home or businesses closing, but I think we get that now. Okay, well, good. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's, you don't know the people in the group, so you always have to take a chance and let people know it's on your mind. And as you can see, you're not alone in this. I think there are a lot of questions people have right now. And of course, what we're going to talk about is how you kind of manage where you're at, but then the implications for how you help other people move along and improve in the work that they're doing. It's a really critical time, and particularly for leaders to have a real big impact on the organization, because as much as you're feeling this way, I'm sure you have somewhat of a good idea of where some of your employees are in the process. So one thing that we do know about leadership is that outstanding leaders really do emerge in times of uncertainty. You know, whether it's a big problem or it's some kind of major business disruption, which typically you can have in big recessionary periods like 2008. I imagine there are several of you that were in leadership roles at that time, and you know how that really changed how we do business. Well, certainly during that time, you see people who move forward, and you see also leaders who really seem to struggle. So I wanted to open this up to the mic. And as you see, you're on mute automatically. So when you have something to say, you have to unmute yourself so we can all hear you. But I want you to just think for a minute about a particular leader that comes to mind in terms of somebody who really did emerge as an outstanding leader, or somebody who continued to be an outstanding leader in a similar time in the past. And then think about what they said or what they did that really made them stand out in your mind? And then what kind of an impact did they have on their team or the organization? So go ahead and open up your mic if you've got a leader. Of course, we don't share names here. You don't have to share companies, but tell us a little bit about that leader and why they had that kind of impact. I'm sure you're not all this shy, so let's hear from someone. So I will share, and I don't want to be the first to share every time, but I'll share an example. And it certainly wasn't in this kind of situation with a pandemic or anything, but it was a time when a senior leader had a very tragic accident, did not die, thank goodness, but a tragic accident. So one day at work, one day not at work, and nobody was sure what was going to happen to that person. And one of the leaders, who wasn't the next level leader in the organization, so it wouldn't have been the obvious person, but I happened to be in human resources at that time. And that leader said, you know, we've got to get out and we've got to talk to people. We've got to meet with the people here. We've got to get people on conference call. We have to tell them what we do or don't know, respecting the person's privacy, of course, but we need to let them know we can't just continue to manage, and we've got such a big figure here who we don't know when they're going to be back, and of course a very beloved leader. And you know what really stood out to me is the fact that at a time where people were really uncertain, I know as a team where we didn't know what was going to be happening with the person, we didn't know how people were going to react, we wanted people to continue to be productive and all those good things. So I really appreciate the fact that somebody did just step forward and said, I'm willing to get out there and do it. I will say it and I will answer questions, and then let's do conference calls. And you know, that person really continued to emerge over many months as previously a very good leader, but really somebody who stood out as being an outstanding one. So I see some, okay, wow, you're pulling in the big ones here. Charles de Gaulle and Churchill, absolutely. So winning the war, and I like what you're saying about, you know, no high promises, just you're gonna lay out the facts, and you know the importance of really getting people together. How about some others? How about even right now, do you see any leaders stepping forward in your organizations? Okay, all right. Well, I think you get the point here, and I have a feeling we'll get a little more comfortable with the group. Okay, Lyndon Johnson, another big one. Wow. So the bar is set really high here today, and ultimately what we want to do is we want to prepare you, and we want you to know what are some of those things again that you can take from these. Obviously very big international leaders that you're putting here in the chat, and then, you know, how do you translate that into a business environment, and how can you really lead in that effective way so you're the person that comes away with that great reputation. I want to share with you this this slide. Now, you may have seen this before. You may be familiar with Kubler-Ross, and you know that model came back from the 1950s sometime, and that was all about the curve that people go through in a death and dying situation. Well, certainly that's not the situation that we are personally in today on this call, but what they found over time is the psychologists realized that that same process, our brains go through that same thing really with any kind of major change. So we can apply that in a business sense. And I've done a lot of change leadership, done a lot of change management training around global initiatives, and then developed a practice around this. And it really is the anchoring formula. And so right now, when we have the COVID situation, that's an obvious huge disruption, business-wise as well as personal-wise. But I'm going to step it back for a second and have you think about just a technology change. And it could be something as simple as the fact that you're doing, all of a sudden somebody says, we're going to have some virtual online learning. And let's say it's the very first time. So in the beginning, you know, sometimes that reaction is going to be, we don't need to do that. We'll just wait. We'll wait till we can do it in a classroom style. And then people they might not be angry about it, but they might be really annoyed, but they also might be angry. I know I've experienced that in my corporate life when we moved a bunch of in-person programs to virtual learning. Some people were really angry because they weren't going to be able to get together anymore and have that networking. And then eventually, hopefully people kind of move into that, okay, I guess this is the way that it's going to be. So how can we make this the best that it can be? So that's that exploring that you see there in the orange. And then eventually people warm up to the idea and they accept this is where we're at. So this is the same curve people are going through right now. When you think of the first time people said, you're going to need to stay in your home, you're going to need to work from home. And, you know, at first there's a lot of denial. Oh, it can't be that bad. I don't think it's going to be this bad. Can't we still just be close to each other and keep a distance and still go to do our jobs? And then people, in a lot of cases, have gotten really angry about it. And then, you know, they move on up into exploring and acceptance. And what I want to really focus the time on is how you help get people kind of up into that exploring and acceptance, and then onto productivity and creativity. And your job as a leader is to help people to not get stuck down there in that anger phase. And you can take this and apply this to any change in the future in your business. If it's you're closing a plant, moving a plant, you're adding a new service to your organization, whether it's positive or negative, people still go through these stages because they have had other experiences in their past that may have gone well, didn't go well. They may personally be prepared for it. Some may be prepared better than others. Some people are more open to change. Other people are very resistant to change. So it's very personal, even in the best of situations. So one thing we know is if you lead from the front, if you don't lead from the front, you really risk getting stuck. And, you know, you're going to see this diagram here with all these curly things and the knots. You know, you can get stuck in this. And when you're the leader, people are really looking to you to say, are we okay? Are we going to make it through this? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? It doesn't mean they don't have any ideas. But first, if you're the leader of your organization, they're going to look to you first for how we're doing this. And so you really have to proactively manage this. And I'll show you it's never too late. So don't worry if you've been just kind of you've been personally stuck in this thing of I'm not sure what we're going to do or how we're going to get out of this, let alone me really engage the people on my team. So it's never too late. But I want to get your thoughts on what can happen if you get stuck down there in that bottom around denial and anger about the way things are. What kind of behaviors will you see in the organization, or maybe what are some of those things you're seeing now? And you can go ahead and chat if you're more comfortable chatting. If you like, just open your mic and let's hear from you. See, I hear somebody's mic open.
Yes. I think one of the things that emerges and this was something that was said to me, that if you're in a situation of crisis, if somebody can give you realistic facts as well as they know them, while at the same time showing that there is hope and a possible way forward, that's extremely helpful. When we hear about the COVID crisis in the press briefings, we hear there's a certain amount of denial busting by Anthony Fauci, which is fine, because if you don't bust this denial, people will not stay home and do what they have to do. But where I think the weakness emerges is that he needs at the same time to emphasize that there's a three-pronged way out of this. One, testing, you know, to the fullest extent. Two, therapeutics. And three, that the end game is having an effective vaccine that can be administered to the population. So the constant reminder that there is a pathway through this and that progress is being made, I think that's important when leading in a situation like this.
No, I think you've said that extremely well, and I can't see your actual name on the screen. Who is this?
This is Dr. Alan Wofsy. I'm a psychiatrist at Lankenau Hospital in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Fantastic. Thank you for being on today. I appreciate that. And absolutely great insight. I'm glued to those updates every day. But I think you lay out a few really important things, and that is we have to focus on the here and now, but as leaders, we have to also point to the future. We have to point to that hope and to give people some direction and vision as to what that's going to be. And I want to, let me click over here. I want to just highlight some things that can happen if we don't do that. Number one, people are going to be very fearful. And again, we can take this and apply this to this COVID situation at work. We can apply it to any type of change. You know, fear can be as simple as a technology change. And I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can produce as many invoices with this new software as I can do today. What'll happen if I don't? Am I going to get fired? Certainly right now, I know that I have members in my family, not my daughter, but I have members in my family that are in the oil and gas business. They are really concerned about their jobs. And, you know, so, I mean, that's just a fact of where probably a lot of your people are right now, is they're really concerned about, now barring if they're not working in the hospital environment, of course, but if you're not in that medical industry, there's a lot of fear of job loss. At the very best, people can get really distracted. Rumors can start about what's going to happen in the organization. And then, as you can see, confusion and just paralysis on, I don't even know what to do. And so while this is all just normal human behavior, and we've got a psychologist on the phone, so I better be very careful about what I say. But, you know, if we don't just recognize this is happening in our organizations, and in the best of organizations it happens, but we don't want it to stay here. And so, as you said, you know, we've got to move out in front of this and deal with some of these things. Because one of my experiences taught me over the years is, you know, I've unfortunately, I bet it's the nature of the business. I've done so much restructuring around the globe. I know how people's emotions go in this process, but even when you're not, because we've trained the organization that can happen, people's minds start going there. So we almost have to get in front of that and say what's not going to happen as much as what is going to happen. So let me get into, okay, now what are we going to do? So this is why you joined today. So I'm hoping you're going to pull away some nuggets from this. And this is a pretty simple little diagram here, but it's just a way to develop a leadership strategy around some key actions that are going to help you not only with yourself, but help you lead your organizations through times of just high degree of uncertainty. And these, fortunately, these leadership actions, one thing we know about leadership is a lot of the expectations of employees, of their leaders, are very universally applicable. So they apply as much in France as they do to the US, as they do to India, etc. But the way you say what you say, the way you do what you do, may look a little bit different to fit the culture, but nonetheless, these elements that are here really do apply and work well globally. So be confident in this, but obviously use your own style, recognize your own culture, because we've got country cultures, but we have cultures in our corporations, in our organizations as well. So just some real simple things. We're going to step through each of these. And I know by no means is this a strategy for how you run your business. I know we have some managing directors on the call. We have, I think, 1 or 2 CEOs of organizations. And we have some others that are not in official leadership roles in terms of management, but they're obviously your influencers and your leaders in your own right. And so you can apply this at every level of the organization. And one thing is true, just my experience dealing with leaders and individuals at all levels, these things resonate and they work. So the first thing is the here and now. We introduced yourselves, where are you today? One of the things that I think is really hard to accept, but I had it beat into me over enough time to realize, it really does matter, is you have to take care of yourself first. So I really want you to take stock of where you're at today. How are you doing in terms of just that self-care? Because like it or not, you're in that leadership role and people are looking to you as the barometer for how are things going. And that goes from everything from what you're saying and doing to how you're behaving, how your mood is. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect by any means, but you want to be as close to your best self as you can. So just make sure that you do what you need to do. The pictures I just put of the oxygen mask, because you hear that on the plane. You've got to take care of yourself on that oxygen before you help the child or help somebody who's in distress, because you're no good to anybody else if you're exhausted or you're not getting what you need. So be calm, just take a breath. This is where we're at. This is where we're going to be for, we don't know. Let's really look after, our health, address our stress, get some time to do a little exercise. I know I'm in different groups. I see people doing dance challenges. That's not my personal thing, but if you like to dance, just that difference of 2 minutes to one of your favorite records sometimes makes a huge difference for people. If you're a spiritual person, make sure you're tending to the spiritual needs and prioritize that sleep. And those are all things that you can be doing. They are very manageable, but just take stock of where you're at. I'd be interested to see right now is where's an area that you want to do a little more in. When you look at this list, or maybe it's not on this list, but what's something that you want to do a little bit more for yourself that's on this list? Just go ahead and put that in the chat. Sleep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard to sleep. I know it's easier for me because I'm kind of what you would say semi-retired. I don't have all of the extra worries and concerns that you have as business leaders at this time. I know if I had been my former role, my brain would be working nonstop. Some exercise. Yeah, and absolutely. Doing some physical activity makes a big difference in terms of just being able to rest. Absolutely. I personally, if I don't do some type of exercise, I don't sleep well, and that's in a good time even. So, take stock of where you're at. Thank you for sharing that on the chat, but take stock of where you're at and think of an area where you want to work on a little bit more to help take care of yourself. The next thing is you've got to create focus in your organization. Don't spend time on what you can't control, because there's an awful lot we can't control. We don't know where this is going, how long it's going to go. We don't know about our personal health, the health of our family, the health of our friends, the health of our employees. We don't know, depending on what kind of a service, are you in a service industry? Are you in an industry that's really suffering right now? Or are you in a medical situation where it's kind of business as usual, except for just a hyper drive and all kinds of new challenges? But one thing, as a leader, it's really your place to create the focus. Now, for some organizations, I see a lot of just local businesses here where I am. They're in retail. They're small family-owned retail businesses that were very, very successful, and they've been shut down. Here in the state of Texas, in our county, they've been shut down for over 3 weeks now. And yet there are things they've decided that they can do. Some moved online, so they have that. Some have gotten their teams involved in doing some volunteer work that's safe to do. But whatever it is, make sure you're creating that focus for your organization, and think through in terms of, make a list of the things that are really on your mind, and then take a look at, what should the priorities be? And as we kind of got back to that model of moving through the curve, are you still stuck up there in denial that things have really radically changed? Because if that is where you're still sitting as a leader, that's probably where your people might be as well. But determine out of that list, what are some of the priorities that you're going to have? And be creative. It's actually an exciting time. I wouldn't want to use the word an exciting time. It isn't time for opportunity, because it's a time to be really creative about trying to deliver value. So when you think about what your value proposition is as an organization, maybe that's completely offline right now because you can't do any of what you normally do or bring any of the value you normally bring. But you want to keep going, right? You've got to get motivated around something. You've got to think of, well, what is the way you can bring value? What are some things that you can do? Think really different, because this is your opportunity, because I'm sure you're all reading a lot of articles like I am about, things are never going to be the same. They aren't. For one reason, people are going to get creative, and they're going to find new ways to do things that either wouldn't have been accepted before, but now they are accepted. And you're going to find those things continue to work and make sense in the future. So take the opportunity to really be creative, and then set the example. Because if we as leaders aren't managing our priorities, and if we're all over the map and we're not setting priority and focus, then you can imagine a lot of other people are going to take our cues, and they're going to be scrambling as well. So this is that time for that calm, for that focus. And I would say be intentional about saying, these are things we can't control. We're going to park these off to the side right now. And here are the areas we're going to focus on. So an important thing is really reaching out to the organization. And I call it pulsing the organization. You may have a different word for that. And as simple as it sounds, it's more important than ever, because this is your opportunity as a leader, as you're not just managing your organization, but you're leading people, you're hopefully showing compassion and empathy, and it really is your chance to round out your whole leadership skill set. And if you haven't really worked this side of it before, I'd say now is a great time for you to be doing that. And I'm sure when you're doing calls, you're seeing people, and that they're when you're on a conference call, maybe kids running in the background, pets, and this and that. You're really seeing them in a different way, and you're seeing some of the challenges that people are having working out of the home, if that's your situation. If you're in the hospital organization or you're in the medical, you're around a lot of people and you can see, but you still make a point to just check in and follow up. You know, one of those things is to see, are they taking care of themselves? You know, what are they doing to take care of themselves? Are there things that you can do to be helping? Just asking questions that you have for them, you know, and that question's just related to your business. How are things going? Are you getting what you need? What can I do for you? Are you running into any particular things that I can help you with? What are some concerns that are continuing, and any issues? And then again, you want to keep tabs on that rumor mill, because the rumor mill is powerful, and it's out there, and it could be good rumors, they could be bad rumors. And so again, it gives you just a time. I usually just ask people, I'd say, okay, I know we're you know, going into a little bit of a different phase here in the business. We've communicated some things that are unsettling. What are some of the rumors? I just ask straight out. People will tell you. If you ask, they will tell you. And it gives you an opportunity that when you're turning around and communicating, that you're going to be able to address those head on, because you can't address what you don't know about. Just go ahead and unmute. Share with me some things that you might be doing specifically to reach out to people. What are some of the things that you're hearing about, or how is this helping you as a leader of an organization?
Hi, this is Jack in Seattle.
Jack?
My problem is I can reach out. I do, you know, daily contacts with my team, but often there's so many questions I don't have the answers to. It's kind of like, I mean, I see, yes, make sure that what they're doing, self-care and all that, but often half the meeting, we end up, you know, saying, yes, we don't know what the next step's going to be, or we don't know what's going to happen. So that's kind of frustrating. I mean, I'm not saying the answers, but I mean, just seems like I want to reach out, but at the same time, I'm kind of saying, well, shoot, if I reach out, what am I going to tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I really want to commend you for doing that, because in my experience, I found a lot of times there are tendencies, you know, when you're leading or you're managing in a business, you're used to knowing the answers, at least most of the time, especially when it comes to how you're operating and your customers or clients. Those are usually questions that we can answer, and that's not necessarily true right now. So I think the fact that you're doing that, even though you don't actually always have the answers or often have the answers, you are creating that climate where people realize they can come to you, they can talk to you. Also, that you're just being genuine with people. You know, you're not trying to make up stuff when you don't know. So a lot of times it's the action that you're doing that's creating that trust and that bond in the organization, even though you don't actually have the answers. And you know, you gain credibility. Yes, I think we'd all like to have the answers, but there are some cases where that's just not going to be true. One, I guess, way that I, you know, when somebody's asking me questions and I don't know the answer, I have to say, I don't know the answer. And I may already know that I can follow up and reach out to somebody that's in a different role or in a higher level in the organization. Maybe they know, but sometimes we already know that they don't know because we've already asked the question as well. But I'd like to try to end the situation with something I can help with. So just wrap up the conversation. If I know we don't have answers for this right now, and as soon as we do, I will let you know. But in the meantime, is there, you know, what can I help you with? Or is there a particular concern? Is there an idea, you know? So it's just a way of ending that conversation on a, I would say, a positive, but also a productive note. Because another thing is, leaders, you don't have to know all the answers. And you've got a lot of people out there that may be coming up with some new ideas. So let's start getting some of those new ideas on the table. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, so hold that thought. So one of the other things that we want to do is communicate openly and frequently. So we talked about a press conference as being an example of, here are the facts. And again, you know, it's so important to be honest and be real. You either know something, you don't know something. If you don't know something, when might we know something? If we don't know, then again, it's all true. But as leaders, you always want to come to the table with something you do know, because again, you've got to show that you're in command of what you can be in command about. So, you know, previously we talked about having a focus area. So whatever that focus is, okay, with whatever that initiative is or that new idea. So who would be affected by that? Where are we going to head with that? Why are we going to do this? What are we doing? And then when are we going to start and stop? Related to your particular organization or business, I'm sure that there are, you know, you can just apply this to the whole operational side of things, as in, how are we going to communicate as an organization? Okay, I'm going to do a weekly town hall with people globally, locally. These are the people we're going to invite. The purpose of the call is X. The reason we're going to do this, we're going to stay in touch. Some weeks I'm not going to have as much to say as others, but we're going to be taking turns, and we're going to be hearing from different parts of our business and our organization on some of the things that they're working on. What are we doing, and when are we going to start and stop? So it's just, you know, a lot of the 5 type of, or 5W types of questions, but it gives you something that you can say, that you can be factual, to show that you're in command, that you have a leadership, you take the leadership seriously, and you're getting people together. And you have to do this somewhat frequently, because if you attempt to communicate and then they don't hear from you for a while, or they don't know when they're going to hear from you, it's really unsettling. And as I mentioned before, if you don't fill in the blanks, they'll fill it in with something that's perhaps more negative or onerous. So my suggestion is to set up some type of regular communication pattern, whatever makes sense for your organization. So if it's weekly, if it's monthly, to let people know how and when you're going to do that, and what you plan to address at that time. You know, what's the general topic area or topic areas? And I think the more that you can talk about things that you can control and the things that you're focusing on, you'll create that organizational purpose and calm that's so important for people to really stay engaged. Any questions around this particular one? Either just unmute or put in the chat. Okay. All right. Very straightforward. It's very easy to do. And I will tell you, it's probably one of the most important things you can do as a leader. It's always been the fact. And so I've had a lot of senior executives who say, well, I don't really have anything new to say. But the way that this is received on the other end from the employees is huge, because they see you're taking the time to do it. And they are hearing things that are very interesting and important to them, even though it might be very routine and basic to you. So don't underestimate the positive influence that you can have in your organization. So I told you I'd talk about getting people involved. Let's just say you're having to come up with some new ways to add value in the organization. The best thing is to get your people involved. And so the word empowerment is overused. I tried to think of other words that might be more, you know, original, but it really is truly about empowering the people in the organization, making sure you're clear in those roles and responsibilities. Because if you're trying to come up with some new services that are going to work in the environment that you may see yourself in now, but in the future, put together some task teams, have people come up with some ideas, have them put together kind of a presentation for you, have people come back and share their ideas and including their business case for it, what they suggest as funding, why they think it's going to work, etc. This is something that I would say I always saw at the ground level or regional level as being important but I really found this to be critical in a global role as the organization gets bigger and bigger and gets more and more diverse. And getting people involved at different levels of the organization is just, it's powerful because you've got smart people that you have hired. And people think differently, different personalities, different focus areas. When you give people the opportunity to just really be creative and come up with ideas, you'll be so surprised at what you get. And it may be that what is presented needs a little bit of refining, that's okay. But I think you can really create a collaboration in the organization. You can drive some energy on their organization when you let people get to work on stuff and bring ideas to the table and tell them, you know, what you want them to prepare, so they don't just come with an idea, but no budget, no thoughts, no timeline. So tell them what you want and then have them come to the table, and then have everybody kind of working on some of those things. I think you're going to see a lot of excitement and energy. And as you think about that curve where you're kind of going down the bottom, and then you're trying to get people up into that experimental phase, exploration. And that's what this is really about. And then, you know, that point of acceptance where, okay, what I'm saying, they liked part of what I said, they adopted some of it they didn't, that's okay. But you're really giving people an opportunity to speak and to follow up and to listen. Anybody have something that they want to share in terms of something around this that worked really well in your organization? Any examples? Again, chat or just open mic. Okay, well, while you're thinking about that, let me just put some examples here. Obviously, you always have people that are the experts in whatever that is. Your engineering experts, your technology experts, your people managers that are experts. Those are obvious people that you go to. You also can use this as an opportunity to tap into some of your early talent, that people that are really developing, people that need that stretch assignment where, yes, normally they work on this type of thing, but they may have some real clever ideas around something that's totally different than what they normally do. They're smart people. Again, let's remember that you've brought in great people in the organization. So really let people stretch and participate and see what they can do. And of course, you can do small groups. You can do cross-functional teams. Cross-function meaning, for me, it was always engineering, IT, supply chain, operational excellence, plant management, HR. You know, you get a little sampling of the functions, specialties in an organization and put their heads together around a particular topic. It doesn't matter if it's a new topic to them or it's not, because again, people bring different things to the table. So I just challenge you to be thinking about how you're going to empower individuals or groups of individuals in your organization to really come up and help to get through this phase, but also come out with some new value props and some productivity. And then that collaboration, you know, I talked about how even on a team, you know, you can collaborate at different levels by having people, you know, frontline person that's doing electrical installation in the field, somebody who is a respiratory technician, who's right the patient front lines, to a nursing manager, to, you know, a physician, you know, really get through that strata. But, you know, the reason, as I'm speaking to those of you that are heads of organizations or that have very senior roles in your organization, is when you're pulsing the organization, when you're involving people in the organization, make sure that you're kind of checking in on those different levels in the organization. And also sometimes you need to check in on the details. So, you know, one of the things we just talked about, you know, Dr. Fauci. So of course he's way in the details, but what you can see with him, he can pull very high up at the strategic level. And then the next minute he's down in the, you know, it was 1.274 million people. But as a senior leader, you've got to stay focused on that future direction. What's our focus area? Where are we headed? How are the people doing? But there are times where you're going to have to really jump in and dive into the details, because you've got to help people get unstuck. So that can mean making sure that there's accountability, making sure that you're busting any particular barriers. And so a really good example around COVID-19, you know, it's a lot of this about the shortage of PPE. Well, let's say you're in a particular hospital and you know the shortage of PPE is driving a certain behavior, it's driving a certain behavior that's not ending up in a very safe thing. So if you're the CEO of that hospital, your first and foremost job may be getting out there and finding a way to get that PPE in the facility, because you know that is a critical defining barrier in the organization. But you know, again, you might also, whatever your specialty is, there are those things that are critical to providing the value in your organization. And if people are stuck at whatever level, or they're not getting the response, or they're not getting the resources, sometimes you're the only one who's going to be able to go in there and help get that undone so that they can get back on track. But you're not going to know it if you're not personally checking in to see how things are going. In other words, don't wait until it bubbles up from the bottom of the organization, because it may never get to you. Because I would say most people think their manager just wants you to fix it. Don't bother the manager. Certainly don't want to bother the director, and you definitely don't want to bother, you know, blah, 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 go all the way up the level. So don't assume it's going to get to you. So that's why I'm saying, as a senior leader, make sure you dive down every now and then and you do that pulse to see what's going on, because there may be things that you are uniquely positioned to actually get corrected. And you can see some of the others that are listed here. Any comments or other insights around that kind of balance of diving deep versus getting back up and staying around that strategy level? Any things that you've done that have worked and served you pretty well?
Actually, this is more of a question. This is Jack again in Seattle. When you bring these points up, this works well in a large organization. I mean, I personally run a very small organization. So, I mean, going down levels and all that, I don't have that many levels below me. So, you know, it's kind of, I mean, I agree. If you're in a large organization, I think this all works better, but in a small one, you have very limited resources. So,
right. So you already know all this. Great. that's great. So I think, you know, your challenge in a smaller organization is just, if you're already really in contact with people and you know what's going on out there and you know where people stand, then perfect. That's all you need to do. It can be very simple. And you know, the larger the organization, the more complicated it gets. But you're in a good position there. Okay, so we're getting here towards the end. I want to just, we can't forget to reward and recognize the stars in your organization. They're always there. And just like leadership, those stars oftentimes really come out in times of stress or hardship or times of uncertainty. And, you know, just think about, are you recognizing the people that are really doing this fabulous work out there, whatever that is? I mean, you're gonna know. So if you've got a small organization, you know these people right off the bat. If you are a manager, if you're a manager of managers, etc., and you know, check in with people, make sure that they are taking a moment to recognize and thank people. It doesn't have to be fancy. So, as I said, the second bullet there, a simple thank you goes a long way to just really recognizing the stars in the organization, because depending on how you manage and lead through this kind of period, people, you know, you could set them on a job search when you get through it and the market gets a little bit better. you know, you may have created an environment that they say, wow, oof, that's not an organization I want to stay in. This was crazy. I'm going to work somewhere else. But hopefully you're creating that climate of, wow, I have a great boss. I work for a great company. I mean, yeah, we're not perfect, but they've handled everything so well, and they didn't forget me in the process. That's where you want to be, because you just don't want to, when people revisit their purpose and their careers, whether it's a recession or it's restructuring or it's COVID-19, when people come out of this, they've been doing a lot of deep thinking. So this is a bit of preservation, making sure that you are rewarding and engaging those top people in your team. And then just keep reinforcing what's important. I just borrowed this little cartoon online, but you know, just keep reinforcing what's important, say it over and over again. Make sure people know that they're on track or what they need to do to get back on track, but make sure that you're visible and present out there. Again, a smaller organization, it may be individual phone chats, but if you're in a bigger organization, make sure that you're finding ways to connect with people and to reinforce what they're doing and validating, you know, what's on the right track and what's on the wrong track. So here, just in closing, I just want to give you just a couple minutes to create an immediate action plan. And that just starts with maybe 2 things that have come to mind that you want to focus on in this next week. And that can be with yourself, with people on your team. But then I do want to challenge you to go back and create your leadership action plan. And again, keep it super simple, keep it really practical. You don't need spreadsheets for this, but it's just a matter of being purposeful around each of these. So I'll give you a moment to do that. And if you don't mind, I guess it would be good to just see if you would share maybe one of those actions that you're going to take in the next week, and just go ahead and put that in the chat window. That'd be a nice way to wrap up the session and give others some tips and ideas as well.
Yes, this is Alan, the psychiatrist from Pennsylvania. One of the things that I would hope to do over the next week is to recognize someone who is in a subordinate position who contributed some useful thoughts and ideas to dealing with the COVID crisis in terms of how it affected the whole organizational unit.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. That's great. And asking about health and concerns, yeah, and absolutely that recognition of what's going on. I actually just saw that one of our hospitals here, a big hospital system, created a thank you board that people in the community can send also their thank yous to the medical professionals at that hospital, which I thought was a great idea. And a lot of people are responding, which is neat to see. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate, all of your time. I know we're wrapping up here in the hour, and I want to just invite you, if you happen to see or hear from somebody that you want to connect a little bit more from, just remind you that you can follow up with Molly, and she can help network and connect the 2 of you. And I hope you were able to get what you wanted out of the session today. I'm happy to entertain any follow-up questions you might want to just funnel to Molly or Andrea, and I'm happy to follow up and respond in some way to you. So I appreciate that. Molly, any closing comments, or Andrea?
Yes, first of all, just thank you again, everybody, for joining us this morning. I just wanted to let all the participants know that the session has been recorded, and we will post the recording on our website and make it accessible to anybody who wants to see it, to listen to it. And we will follow up with an email that will include Shelley's contact information if anybody has any follow-up questions or wants to get in touch with her after this presentation. Thank you again, Molly. If you have anything else that you want to say in closing, feel free.
Thank you, Mom. No, really, thank you very much. As mentioned, I'll follow up on email, and we will have a copy of the presentation as well in PDF format. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, okay. And I think let's appreciate everyone's thoughts that they put in the chat window there over the past minute too. So as was mentioned, if there is anyone you heard talking or saw in the chat window that you want to be connected with, just let me know, and we can connect you as well, whether it's today or in the future. You can always reach out to us.
Be healthy, be safe, and take care.
Thank you.
That could be